The negotiation chamber smelled like fear and stale recycled air. David Reed noticed it the moment the Talrith delegation entered through the airlock. 3 years of tense peace between humanity and the Dominion had led to this moment, and every species in the galaxy seemed to be holding their breath. The neutral station Havencross floated in empty space, deliberately chosen because neither side could claim advantage here. Sathros entered first, his 6 limbs moving with predatory grace. The Talrith commander stood nearly 8 feet tall, scales gleaming under the harsh station lights. Behind him, 20 armed guards filed in with weapons visible but not raised. David remained seated at the human side of the table, fingers laced together, watching everything with calm eyes that missed nothing. Ambassador Kira Osman sat beside David, her diplomatic training evident in every controlled movement. She had spent months preparing for this meeting, crafting compromises that might satisfy both sides. Across the room, a spider-like alien named Frix observed from the council's designated corner, recording devices humming softly. 6 other species had sent representatives to witness whatever happened here today. "We appreciate your presence, High Commander," Kira began, her voice steady. "The border disputes between our territories need not escalate to violence." Sathros settled into his seat with a sound like grinding stone, his 4 eyes fixed on the humans with unconcealed contempt. "Your species arrived in this region barely a decade ago," he said, his translator rendering his hissing speech into flat common tongue. "The Dominion has held these systems for 3 centuries. Your claim is an insult to our ancestors." David studied the alien commander while Kira presented the human proposal. 3 border systems remained contested, each containing resources both sides wanted. The human offer granted 2 systems to the Talrith while keeping 1, plus trade agreements that would benefit everyone. It was generous, perhaps too generous. "Unacceptable," Sathros said before Kira finished speaking. "All 3 systems belong to the Dominion. You will withdraw or face consequences." The room temperature seemed to drop. Frix's recording devices chirped more urgently. The other observers shifted in their seats, some moving closer to the exits. Kira glanced at David, who gave the slightest shake of his head. "Not yet." "Commander, we've offered fair terms," Kira continued. "War serves neither of our peoples. Surely we can find middle ground." Sathros stood abruptly, his full height dominating the room. With a gesture, one of his guards activated a holographic display. Space filled with images of warships, thousands of them, stretching across star systems in perfect formation. Ground troops filled planetary surfaces in endless ranks. Supply chains moved like arteries through the Dominion's territory. "This is middle ground," Sathros declared. "I command 1,000,000 soldiers, Ambassador. The Talrith Dominion has crushed 17 species who refuse to accept our rightful territory. Your small population cannot hope to resist. We offer you one mercy: retreat now, and we will allow your colonies to exist elsewhere." The hologram zoomed in on troop carriers, each one packed with hundreds of armored Talrith warriors. Transport ships by the thousands, orbital bombardment platforms, siege equipment designed to reduce cities to rubble. It was an impressive display meant to intimidate. David leaned back in his chair, expression unchanged. Around the room, the observer species reacted with visible concern. Several began whispering into communication devices. Frix's multiple eyes focused intently on the human delegation. "We cannot accept those terms," Kira said, though her voice had lost some of its confidence. "Commander Reed, perhaps you have thoughts on this proposal." Every eye in the room turned to David. He had remained silent throughout the entire negotiation, content to let diplomacy run its course. Now he uncrossed his fingers and placed both hands flat on the table. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "High Commander," David said quietly, "you've shown us 1,000,000 soldiers." Sathros's scales rippled with satisfaction. "Indeed, the full might of the Dominion's 3rd Fleet. They await my command in systems adjacent to your colonies. 48 hours from now, if you have not withdrawn, they will demonstrate why the Dominion remains unconquered." David nodded slowly, as if considering this information carefully. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "1,000,000 soldiers," he repeated. "Perfect." The word hung in the air. Sathros tilted his head, confusion replacing triumph. "Perfect," he echoed. "1,000,000 targets," David finished. Silence crashed through. The chamber like a physical force. Kira's eyes widened. Fritz's recording devices went into overdrive. The observer species froze, some of them recognizing something in David's tone that the Talrith commander had missed. Sathros stared at the human for 3 full seconds before laughing. The sound was like rocks tumbling down a mountainside. His guards joined in, a chorus of harsh amusement. "You think 12 colonial worlds and a handful of ships can threaten the Dominion?" he demanded. "Your bravado is entertaining but foolish." David stood, matching the alien's movement. He was a full 2 feet shorter, but something in his posture made several observers step back. "High Commander, you've given us 48 hours, he said. "I suggest you use that time to reconsider. War with humanity is not what you think it will be." "Is that a threat?" Sathros moved closer, looming over the human. "Do you understand what 1,000,000 soldiers means? We will bury your colonies under our dead if necessary. The Dominion does not lose." "Neither do we," David replied softly. "We just win differently." Kira touched David's arm, trying to pull him back into diplomacy. "Commander Reed, perhaps we should." "The negotiation is over, Ambassador," Sathros interrupted. 48 hours, withdraw or be destroyed. There is no third option." He turned to leave, his guards falling in around him. "Your captain's arrogance will cost your species dearly." David watched them go, his expression thoughtful. After the airlock sealed, the other observers began talking urgently among themselves. Several left immediately, rushing to inform their governments. Fritz approached the human delegation, multiple appendages gesturing concern. "Captain Reed," the council observer said carefully, "provoking the Talrith was unwise. They have never lost a war." David pulled out a small communication device. "Neither have we, Observer Fritz." He activated it, speaking clearly. "Admiral Cross, this is Reed. Negotiations failed as expected. Implement Protocol 7. I want the strike group at Threshold 7 in 36 hours. Kira grabbed his shoulder. "David, what are you doing? We need more time to." "We're out of time," David said, not unkindly. "The Dominion chose war the moment they sent Sathros. He's a warrior, not a diplomat. They wanted us to back down. Instead, we're going to teach them why quantity doesn't beat quality." 12 ships. "Against 300, Kira whispered. 1,000,000 soldiers." David smiled then, genuinely. 1,000,000 targets, Ambassador, and we don't miss." Across the galaxy, orders began flowing through human military networks. Crews reported to their stations. Weapons systems came online. The Talrith Dominion had expected fear. What they got instead was something far more dangerous: human beings going to work. Admiral Patricia Cross had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 11 years, and she had never seen headquarters move this fast. Within 3 hours of Reed's transmission, every available warship received deployment orders. 12 vessels total, carefully selected for what came next. The galaxy expected humanity to mobilize hundreds of ships in response to the Talrith threat. Instead, Earth sent a strike group that most species would consider suicidally small. The command center buzzed with controlled chaos. Holographic displays showed the Talrith fleet gathering at the border. 300 warships arranged in traditional Dominion battle formation. Patricia watched Lieutenant Commander Hassan al-Rashid manipulate the tactical display, highlighting key elements of the enemy formation. Beside him, Dr. Yuki Tanaka analyzed intelligence gathered over 3 years of tense peace. "Their command structure is remarkably rigid," Yuki explained, pointing to cluster patterns in the Talrith fleet. "Every 30 ships reports to a sector commander. All sector commanders report to Sathros directly. They use tight beam communications exclusively, no redundancy in their network." Patricia nodded slowly, seeing what the intelligence analyst was showing her. "Single point of failure," she murmured. "Multiple single points," Yuki corrected. Take out 6 sector commanders and the entire fleet loses coordination. They train for overwhelming force tactics, not adaptive response to changing conditions. Hassan pulled up historical records. The Dominion has fought 17 wars in the last 2 centuries. They won every one through pure numerical advantage, mass formations, frontal assault, artillery bombardment until the enemy breaks. He highlighted a dozen battle summaries. They've never faced an opponent who fights asymmetrically. Patricia studied the Talrith approach to warfare with the eye of someone who had spent decades understanding how battles were won. The Dominion wasn't wrong, exactly. Overwhelming force. Worked against most species, but humanity had learned different lessons from its own bloody history. 2 world wars had taught Earth that technology and tactics could defeat larger armies. Guerrilla conflicts had proven that adaptability beat rigid doctrine. What assets do we have in the Threshold 7 system? Patricia asked. Hassan brought up new data. Reed's strike group will arrive in 30 hours. The relentless leads supported by 11 multi-role vessels, total crew complement, 2,400 personnel. He paused meaningfully. Against 1 million Talrith soldiers. How many soldiers are combat effective at any given moment? Patricia asked. Yuki manipulated her screens. Accounting for their deployment time, support requirements, and the fact that 90% of their force is designed for ground assault. Maybe 40,000 can actually operate in space combat scenarios. The rest are infantry, artillery, armor, all useless until they reach a planetary surface. So we don't let them reach a planetary surface, Patricia concluded. Reed understands this. Reed wrote the doctrine on it, Hassan said with a slight smile. He spent 5 years in special operations before transferring to fleet command. The man thinks like a scalpel, not a hammer. Patricia pulled up personnel files on the strike group commanders. Each one had been selected for specific skills. Electronic warfare, precision targeting, rapid maneuver tactics. These weren't traditional fleet officers trained in ship-to-ship broadsides. These were hunters who understood that the best fight was the one your enemy couldn't engage in. Meanwhile, aboard the warship Relentless, David Reed addressed his crew. The ship hummed with pre-battle preparations, but he had insisted on gathering everyone in the main hangar bay. 200 personnel looked up at him, their faces showing various degrees of concern. They all knew the numbers. The Talrith think they're going to steamroll us, David began without preamble. High Commander Sathros has 1 million soldiers under his command. He thinks that number means something. David pulled up a holographic display showing the enemy fleet. What he doesn't understand is that we don't fight that kind of war anymore. He zoomed in on individual Talrith vessels. Each of these ships carries 3,000 soldiers, infantry trained for ground combat, excellent warriors by all accounts. Disciplined, brave, loyal, David paused, and completely irrelevant to what's about to happen. A young ensign raised her hand hesitantly. Sir, how do we beat 300 ships with 12? David smiled. We don't beat 300 ships, Ensign. We beat 6 command vessels, we blind their sensors, we cut their communications, we make their numbers into a liability instead of an advantage. He highlighted the Talrith formation. They fight in dense formations because it makes them feel strong, all those ships clustered together, supporting each other. But it also means they can't maneuver independently. One bad order affects dozens of vessels. Hassan stepped forward, taking over the presentation. Our doctrine is simple. Precision over power. We don't need to destroy their fleet. We need to make it non-functional, disable their command ships, jam their communications, remove their ability to coordinate. Let all those soldiers sit in disabled vessels wondering what happened. What about casualties? Another crew member asked. David's expression became serious. We're not trying to kill anyone. The Talrith are aggressive, not evil. They're following their cultural programming just like we follow ours. Our objective is to neutralize their military capability while minimizing loss of life, both theirs and ours. He looked around the hangar. Anyone who joined Earth's fleet because they wanted to rack up a body count is on the wrong ship. The crew nodded, understanding. Humanity had learned the cost of total war. Nuclear weapons had nearly ended civilization twice. Modern Earth fought to protect its interests, not to exterminate its enemies. It was a lesson most galactic species hadn't learned yet. "We deploy in 18 hours, David continued. Department heads run final system checks. Tactical teams review target packages. Electronic warfare, I want every jamming system calibrated perfectly. Maintenance, I don't want to hear about any mechanical issues once we're in the combat zone." He paused. "And everyone gets some rest. We're about to show the galaxy what human warfare looks like in practice." The crew dispersed to their duties. Hassan approached David privately. "You really think we can pull this off without major casualties?" he asked quietly. David considered the question. The Talrith are predictable because they've never had to adapt. Every war they've won reinforced their doctrine. They think their way is the only way. He pulled up tactical projections. "We hit them fast, we hit them precisely, we don't give them time to adjust. If we do it right, most of their soldiers will never even reach their combat stations. And if Sathros doesn't surrender after we disable his fleet?" "Then we disable him too," David said simply. "But I think once he sees what's happening, once he realizes his million soldiers can't help him, he'll understand. The Talrith value strength. We're about to demonstrate that real strength isn't about numbers." Across the border, the Talrith fleet continued assembling. Commander Vorthais watched the formations with growing unease. He had expressed concerns to Sathros about the human response being too small, too quiet. The High Commander had dismissed his worries as cowardice, but Vorthais had studied the limited information available about human military history. These were a species that had nearly destroyed themselves in global conflicts. They understood war in ways most civilizations did not. "High Commander," Vorthais ventured carefully, "the humans have not requested reinforcements. They have not evacuated their colonies. Their fleet movements suggest confidence, not fear." Sathros barely looked up from his tactical displays. "They are bluffing, pretending strength they do not possess. When our fleet arrives, they will see the futility of resistance." He gestured at the assembled armada. "No species can stand against this much power." Vorthais said nothing more, but his unease grew. 30 hours until contact. 30 hours to discover whether human confidence was justified. The asteroid field at Threshold 7 had existed for millions of years, debris from a planetary collision that created perfect cover for ships that knew how to use it. David Reed stood on the bridge of Relentless, watching the tactical display with the calm focus of someone who had spent months planning for this exact moment. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, no wasted movement, no unnecessary chatter. "Talrith fleet emerging from FTL in 3 minutes, Hassan reported from the tactical station. "Projected entry point matches their standard doctrine exactly." David nodded. Predictability was a weakness, and the Dominion had been predictable for 3 centuries. "All ships report status," he ordered. 11 acknowledgements came through the communication network. The human strike group spread across the asteroid field in a pattern that looked random but placed each vessel in optimal position. Electronic warfare ships hiding behind the largest asteroids. Missile frigates positioned for clear firing lanes. The Relentless itself sat in the densest part of the debris field, sensors active but emissions minimized. "Enemy fleet incoming," sensors called out. Space rippled and tore as 300 Talrith warships translated from faster-than-light travel. They emerged in perfect formation, a massive wall of military power that had broken 17 civilizations. The fleet arranged itself in the Dominion's traditional victory pattern, command vessels in the center, screening ships in layers around them, troop ships in protected positions at the rear. High Commander Sathros stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominance, surveying the human colonies on his displays. "Broadcast surrender demands on all frequencies," he ordered. "Give them one final chance to withdraw peacefully." The message went out, translated into human languages. Silence answered it. Sathros's scales rippled with satisfaction. "Scan for human vessels," he commanded. Detecting scattered contacts. the sensor officer reported. Small signatures throughout the asteroid field appears to be a light patrol force. Vorthai studied the sensor data with growing concern. High Commander, only 12 vessels. Where is their main fleet? This is their main fleet, Sathros said dismissively. They hoped the asteroid field would protect them. Begin advance, combat formation. We will sweep these asteroids clean and then proceed to planetary bombardment positions. The Talrith Armada began moving forward, maintaining tight formation. 300 ships advancing like a metal tide. Aboard Relentless, David watched them come. They're not even spreading out, Hassan observed. Standard doctrine says maintain formation cohesion. Perfect, David replied. All ships initiate Protocol 7, electronic warfare, you are weapons free. What happened next would be analyzed by military academicians for generations. 3 human vessels equipped with advanced electronic warfare systems activated simultaneously. Electromagnetic pulses cascaded through the Talrith formation, targeting specific frequency bands. The Dominion fleet used tight beam communications, a single network connecting all vessels through their command structure. In 3 seconds, that network went dark. High Commander, we've lost all intership communications, the Talrith communications officer reported, his voice rising in alarm. Switch to backup systems, Sathros ordered. Backup systems are also jammed, attempting tertiary protocols. Across the fleet, individual captains suddenly found themselves isolated. 3 centuries of doctrine assumed constant communication with command. No one had trained for independent operation. Confusion rippled through the Talrith formation as ships tried to maintain course without guidance. Launch drones, David commanded. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid field, thousands of small autonomous units deployed, each one the size of a human fist, equipped with basic sensors and a simple computer. They swarmed toward the Talrith fleet like insects, too small and numerous for point defense systems to track effectively. We're detecting multiple small contacts, a Talrith sensor officer reported. Thousands of them, they're attaching to our hulls. The drones didn't carry explosives. They carried sophisticated electronic components. Once attached to a Talrith vessel, they began mapping systems, identifying weaknesses, transmitting data back to the human fleet. Within minutes, every Talrith ship had been analyzed, cataloged, and designated with precision strike coordinates. Fire, David said quietly. 12 human ships unleashed coordinated missile strikes, not the massive barrages of traditional warfare, but precisely calculated launches. Each missile had a specific target: sensor arrays, communication nodes, weapon systems, engine components. The strikes came from multiple angles simultaneously, using the asteroid field for cover between shots. The first Talrith vessel to go dark was a sector command ship. Its bridge received 3 direct hits that disabled primary systems without breaching the hull. Inside, 1,000 Talrith soldiers felt their ship shudder and then die around them. Lights flickered to emergency power. Gravity generators stuttered. Weapons went offline. Sector 3 command ship is not responding, a Talrith officer reported to Sathros. Sector 5 command ship reports systems failure. Sector 1 is disabled. The reports came faster than Sathros could process them. Across his fleet, vessels went silent, not destroyed, not even significantly damaged, but functionally dead in space. Their million soldiers trapped inside ships that could no longer fight. Close formation, Sathros ordered. All vessels moved to mutual support positions. But without communications, the order never reached most of his fleet. Individual captains made their own decisions, some continuing forward, others trying to retreat, most simply holding position. The careful Talrith formation dissolved into chaos. David watched the tactical display with satisfaction. 50 Talrith vessels disabled in the first hour. 0 human casualties. The mathematics of modern warfare playing out exactly as predicted. Target the next layer, he ordered. Prioritize vessels attempting to restore communications. Hassan coordinated the strike group. Relentless, you take targets 1 through 5, Vigilant 6 through 10, Thunderchild 11 through 15. The orders continued, each human ship assigned specific targets, each captain executing their role in the larger strategy. Aboard Eternal Dominance, Sathros finally understood what was happening. The humans weren't fighting a traditional battle. They weren't trying to destroy his fleet. They were surgically dismantling it, turning his numerical advantage into a liability. All those ships clustered together became targets that couldn't effectively defend themselves. "Deploy fighters," Sathros commanded. "All carriers launch interceptors." But the fighters, designed for atmospheric combat and close support of ground troops, proved nearly useless against human ships that refused to engage directly. The small craft chased sensor ghosts through the asteroid field, burning fuel and accomplishing nothing. Several crashed into asteroids. Others limped back to disabled carriers that could no longer recover them. "High Commander, we've lost 30% of our fleet combat capability," Vorthais reported, his voice strained. "We still have our soldiers, but they cannot deploy without functional ships." Sathros stared at the tactical display. He had commanded 1,000,000 soldiers. He had brought 300 warships. He had followed every principle of Dominion military doctrine. And in less than 2 hours, his fleet was falling apart without the humans even closing to traditional combat range. A communication came through on emergency frequencies, clear and unhurried. "High Commander Sathros, this is Captain Reed. You now have 500,000. Targets trapped in disabled vessels. I can make that number 0 by targeting life support systems. Or you can order your remaining functional ships to power down weapons and stand by for boarding." David paused. "You have 10 minutes to decide." Sathros looked around his bridge. His crew waited for orders. His 1,000,000 soldiers waited for deployment. His fleet waited for leadership. And for the first time in his career, the High Commander of the Talrith Dominion's Third Fleet had no idea what order to give. "Sir," Vorthais prompted quietly. Sathros's clawed hand hovered over the communication panel. Pride warred with responsibility. Honor demanded he fight to the last ship. But wisdom, newly learned and bitter, suggested that continuing this battle would only add to the casualty count without changing the outcome. "Captain Reed," Sathros said slowly, each word tasting like defeat, "what guarantee do I have that you will not simply destroy my fleet after we surrender?" David's response came immediately. "You have my word as an officer. We will treat your crews according to military law. Wounded will receive medical care. Prisoners will be held safely until diplomatic resolution. We don't want to kill your soldiers, Commander. We never did." 10 minutes passed. Across the galaxy, sensors watched and waited. Governments held emergency sessions. News networks broadcast updates. The greatest military confrontation in recent history balanced on a single decision. Finally, Sathros activated fleet-wide emergency communications. "All Talrith vessels, this is High Commander Sathros. Cease fire. Power down weapon systems. Await further instructions." His voice carried the weight of 300 years of Dominion pride, now thoroughly shattered. The medical bay on the human carrier sanctuary had never been designed to handle thousands of casualties from a single engagement. But Chief Medical Officer Dr. Rachel Foster had prepared anyway, knowing that battles rarely went according to plan. What she hadn't expected was treating mostly minor injuries from Talrith crews evacuated from damaged vessels. The 3,000 Dominion soldiers killed in the opening minutes represented the only real casualties of the entire engagement. Rachel moved between beds where Talrith wounded received treatment. Most injuries came from system failures aboard their disabled ships, not from direct human weapons fire. A soldier named Drennick lay in one bed, his left arm in a regeneration sleeve. He watched human medics work with confused eyes. "Why?" Drennick asked when Rachel checked his progress. "Why treat us? We came to conquer your worlds." Rachel adjusted his medication without hesitation. "Because you're injured and we're doctors," she said simply. Your commanders made military decisions. You followed orders. That doesn't mean you deserve to die or suffer. Drennick had no response. Nothing in Dominion training prepared him for enemies who provided medical care. Across the bay, other Talrith soldiers whispered among themselves, trying to understand what kind of species defeated you in battle and then healed your wounds. On the bridge of Relentless, David prepared for a conversation he knew would be difficult. Sathros had agreed to direct communication, and Hassan was establishing the secure channel. The tactical display showed the aftermath of the engagement. 200 disabled Talrith vessels, 50,000 prisoners, and a galactic audience watching every development. Sathros appeared on the view screen, his posture still proud despite defeat. Behind him, the Bridge of Eternal Dominance showed damage from the missile strikes. "Captain Reed," he said formally, "your tactical performance was exceptional. The Dominion has never experienced such a decisive defeat." David nodded acknowledgement. "High Commander, I take no pleasure in it. This didn't have to happen." "Yes, it did," Sathros replied, his tone thoughtful rather than angry. "The Dominion needed to learn this lesson. I needed to learn this lesson." He gestured at his disabled fleet. "You said my million soldiers were targets. I assumed you meant you would kill them all. I didn't understand you meant they were irrelevant." "They're not irrelevant," David corrected. "They're people, trained warriors who deserve better than being thrown into battles their commanders don't understand." He pulled up casualty figures. 3,000 dead because you ordered damaged ships to ram my vessels. I had to defend my crews. Those deaths were unnecessary. Sathros's scales shifted color, displaying emotion humans were only beginning to understand. "I thought your restraint was weakness," he admitted. "Our culture teaches that mercy is for the defeated. The strong show no quarter." "And how's that working out for you?" David asked bluntly. The Talrith commander made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Poorly, as you have demonstrated." He leaned forward. "Explain to me, Captain, why didn't you destroy my fleet when you had the chance? Your weapons clearly have the capability. You disabled our vessels without destroying them. This required more precision, more skill, more risk to your own forces. Why take that risk?" David considered his response carefully. "Because destroying your fleet accomplishes nothing except creating bodies. Disabled ships and captured crews give us leverage for negotiation. Dead soldiers only create martyrs and hatred." He paused. "We've fought enough wars to know that how you win matters as much as winning itself." "This is a very strange philosophy for a warrior species," Sathros observed. "We're not a warrior species," David said. "We're a survivor species. There's a difference. Warriors fight for glory and honor. Survivors fight to protect what matters and then stop fighting when the threat is neutralized." He pulled up images of Earth history. "We nearly destroyed ourselves twice with weapons that could burn entire continents. We learned that total war destroys both winner and loser." Sathros studied the historical images with visible shock. "You possessed such weapons." "We still do," David confirmed. "But we don't use them, learned restraint the hard way, through millions of deaths and near extinction." He met the Talrith commander's eyes. "That's why we fight the way we do, not because we can't be ruthless, but because we know where ruthlessness leads." Before Sathros could respond, an incoming transmission interrupted them. Ambassador Kira Osman appeared on a secondary channel. "Captain Reed, the Galactic Council has issued formal statements. They're demanding immediate ceasefire and neutral arbitration of the border disputes." "Tell them the ceasefire is already in effect," David replied. "High Commander Sathros has agreed to stand down. We're prepared to begin negotiations." Kira looked surprised. "The Council assumed this would drag into a prolonged conflict. Your resolution has caught them off guard." She glanced at something off-screen. "They're also expressing concerns about human military capabilities. Several species are requesting reassurance that Earth won't use these tactics aggressively." David sighed. "Ambassador, please inform the Council that Earth has no interest in conquest. We defended our territorial claims, nothing more." He looked back at Sathros. "Perhaps the High Commander would be willing to provide his perspective on human intentions." Sathros was quiet for a moment. Ambassador Osman, I came to your borders with overwhelming force, intending to crush human resistance through superior numbers. He gestured at his disabled fleet. Captain Reed defeated my fleet without unnecessary bloodshed. He could have annihilated us, but chose not to. If humanity intended galactic conquest, they would have demonstrated it here. He paused. I believe your species fights only when provoked and shows restraint when victorious. This is not the behavior of conquerors. Kira's expression showed relief. Thank you, High Commander. Your statement will carry significant weight with the Council. She signed off, leaving David and Sathros alone again. That was unexpected, David commented. Supporting your former enemy. I am supporting the truth, Sathros corrected. The Dominion values strength above all else. You demonstrated strength. You earned respect. He shifted in his seat. I have a question, Captain. If our positions were reversed, if I had defeated your fleet, what would the Talrith have done? David didn't hesitate. Based on your military history, occupied our colonies, impressed our populations into service, claimed our resources, the standard conquest pattern. Yes, Sathros agreed quietly. That is what we would have done. That is what we have always done. He looked at his disabled ships. Perhaps that is why we have never truly understood peace. We know only victory or defeat, never cooperation. It's not too late to learn, David suggested. The galaxy needs strong species, but strong doesn't mean cruel. Over the next hours, human crews began boarding disabled Talrith vessels, not as conquerors, but as technical assistants. Engineers helped restore life support and basic systems. Medical teams provided additional care for injured. The massive logistics of managing 50,000 prisoners tested human resources, but Admiral Cross had prepared well. Aboard one disabled ship, Drennick spoke with human engineers repairing his vessel's power systems. You destroyed our capability to fight, and now you repair it, he asked. A young human technician named Amy looked up from her work. We disabled your weapons, we're restoring everything else. Life support, communications, basic engines, she smiled. Once. Negotiations are complete. You'll need working ships to get home. This makes no strategic sense, Drennick protested. You should keep us helpless. Amy considered this. That would make you desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. Better to treat you well, show you are not monsters, make peace easier to accept. She returned to her repairs. Besides, we're not at war with you. We're at war with the decisions your leaders made. Once better decisions get made, we can all go home. The Talrith soldier had no response. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. Species that had dismissed humanity as newcomers now watched recordings of the battle, analyzing tactics, reassessing positions. The Dominion's defeat sent shockwaves through civilizations that relied on military force. On Earth, in a quiet office, Admiral Cross received reports from the Threshold 7 system. Her strike group had performed flawlessly. 0 human casualties, minimal enemy deaths, strategic objectives achieved. She pulled up a communication from the Galactic Council. They wanted human military advisors. They wanted doctrine consultations. They wanted to understand how 12 ships defeated 300. Patricia smiled slightly. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not with threats and conquest, but with a demonstration of what modern warfare could be. Precise, effective, and surprisingly merciful. The question now was whether other species would learn from it. 6 months after the Threshold 7 engagement, David Reed stood in a room he never expected to enter. The Talrith War College on their homeworld. The invitation had come directly from the Dominion government, now desperately trying to modernize their military doctrine. Beside him, former High Commander Sathros served as his official liaison, a position that represented a dramatic fall from power and an unexpected new beginning. The lecture hall held 200 young Talrith officers, their scales displaying colors that David's translator identified as intense curiosity mixed with skepticism. Many had lost family members in previous Dominion wars. All had grown up believing their military was invincible. The defeat at Threshold 7 had shattered that certainty. Admiral Reed, the college director began, using David's new rank. Please explain to our students how 12 vessels defeated 300. David activated the holographic display, showing the battle from multiple angles. The answer is simple. We didn't defeat 300 vessels. We defeated 6 command ships and a communication network. He highlighted the Talrith formation. Your doctrine assumes that numerical superiority guarantees victory. Our doctrine assumes that smart targeting makes numbers irrelevant. A young officer raised her hand. But Admiral, the Dominion has won 17 wars using mass force tactics. Why did it fail against humanity? Sathros answered before David could. Because we fought species who used similar tactics, he explained. Ship against ship, soldier against soldier, numbers against numbers. Humanity fights differently. They target the system, not the individual components. His scales shifted to a teaching color. We brought 1 million soldiers. They made those soldiers unable to fight. The humans won without defeating our troops directly. David nodded appreciation. Exactly, modern warfare isn't about who has more soldiers, it's about who can render the other side's forces non-functional fastest. He showed examples from Earth's history. We learned this through terrible experience. World War I, mass armies grinding each other down. World War II, strategic bombing and logistics becoming more important than frontline troops. Later conflicts, precision strikes replacing carpet bombing. The students listened with intense focus. This represented a fundamental challenge to everything they'd learned. David could see the cognitive dissonance on their faces. Their military tradition valued courage, discipline, and overwhelming force. But courage couldn't overcome disabled weapons systems. Discipline couldn't restore jammed communications. Overwhelming force was useless when your ships couldn't coordinate. Your species nearly destroyed itself, another officer observed. How did you develop restraint after gaining such destructive capability? David's expression became somber. We developed restraint because we came very close to extinction, twice. He showed images of nuclear detonations, ruined cities, radiation casualties. These weapons could end civilization in hours. We built thousands of them, pointed them at each other, and nearly used them. The lecture hall fell silent. We survived because enough people on all sides realized that winning a total war meant losing everything worth protecting. Sathros added his perspective. The Dominion has never faced such a threat. We conquered or we were conquered, but we always continued. Our homeworld was never endangered. We never learned what it means to fight for survival rather than glory. His tone carried weight. Admiral Reed's people understand this instinctively. It shapes their entire military philosophy. Over the following weeks, David conducted training sessions with Talrith military planners, teaching electronic warfare, explaining asymmetric tactics, demonstrating how small forces could defeat larger ones through superior intelligence and coordination. The Dominion students were quick learners, their analytical minds adapting to new concepts. But not all Talrith approved of these changes. Traditional military commanders saw human influence as weakening Dominion's strength. Protests occurred in some regions. Calls for Sathros to face military tribunal gained support. The political situation remained tense. During a private dinner, Sathros raised this concern. Admiral, some of my people believe you are deliberately weakening the Dominion by teaching us to fight like humans rather than Talrith. David considered his response carefully. Are they wrong? He asked. I'm teaching you to fight more effectively, but that does mean abandoning some traditional approaches. They are not entirely wrong, Sathros admitted, but they are not entirely right either. He manipulated a holographic display showing galactic military distributions. The Dominion relied on mass force because we could maintain larger standing armies than our neighbors. Human tactics require different resources. Advanced technology, trained specialists, sophisticated coordination. He paused. We are attempting to change overnight what took you centuries to develop. Then don't change overnight, David suggested. Keep your ground forces, they're excellent soldiers, but augment them with new capabilities. Electronic warfare units, precision strike teams, intelligence networks. He highlighted sections of the Talrith military structure. You don't need to become human. You need to become a version of the Dominion that can fight effectively in a modern context. This conversation reflected broader changes across the galaxy. The Threshold 7 engagement had forced multiple species to reconsider their military doctrines. Some, like the Talrith, embraced reform. Others doubled down on traditional approaches. Earth found itself inadvertently becoming a model for military modernization. Ambassador Kira Osman dealt with the diplomatic consequences. Smaller species requesting human protection. Larger species demanding reassurance that Earth wouldn't use its capabilities aggressively. Trade negotiations becoming entangled with security agreements. The human position as a new galactic power came with complications nobody had anticipated. "We never wanted this role," Kira told David during his brief return to Earth. "We just wanted to protect our colonies. Now half the galaxy wants us to teach them how we fight, and the other half fears we'll conquer them." David understood the dilemma. "We prove ourselves through actions," he said. "Consistent, measured responses, helping species that request assistance, refusing to exploit our advantages." He smiled slightly. "It's exactly what we did with the Talrith. We could have demanded territorial concessions after our victory. Instead, we settled for diplomatic resolution and offered military cooperation." The true test came 3 months later. Pirates from the lawless Rim territories raided a neutral trade station, taking hostages from multiple species, including both human and Talrith civilians. The Galactic Council debated intervention while the pirates made demands. David received an unexpected communication. "Admiral Reed," Sathros said formally, "the Dominion is preparing a rescue operation. We request human assistance." His tone carried weight. "This would be the first joint military operation between our species." David reviewed the tactical situation. The pirate base was heavily defended, positioned in an asteroid cluster. Traditional assault would cost many lives. "What assets can you commit?" he asked. 200 soldiers, 10 combat ships," Sathros replied. "We will provide the main force. We request your electronic warfare and precision strike capabilities." Planning the operation took 48 hours. Human and Talrith tactical officers working together, combining Dominion ground combat expertise with human technological advantages. The resulting plan used Talrith troops for the hostage rescue while human systems disabled pirate defenses. Neither side could accomplish the mission alone. Together they were formidable. The operation succeeded with 0 hostage casualties and minimal pirate deaths. Across the galaxy, observers noted the smooth cooperation. Between former enemies, military analysts studied the combined operation, seeing how different species' strengths could complement each other. After the mission, David and Sathros stood together at a memorial for the 3 Talrith soldiers killed during Threshold 7. The Dominion had erected it on a human colony world, a gesture of reconciliation. Representatives from 20 species attended the dedication. "I commanded 1,000,000 soldiers," Sathros said quietly, speaking to David rather than the crowd. "I thought that number represented ultimate power." "And now," David asked. "Now I understand that power comes from capability, not quantity, from coordination, not just courage, from wisdom, not merely strength." Sathros looked at the memorial. "These soldiers died because I didn't understand these lessons. I won't dishonor their deaths by failing to learn from them." David placed a hand on the Talrith's armored shoulder. "They didn't die in vain. Their sacrifice taught both our peoples that there's a better way forward." Around them, the gathered species watched this moment between former adversaries. Humanity had arrived in galactic civilization not as conquerors or victims, but as teachers of a hard-won lesson. That true strength lay not in the ability to defeat enemies, but in the wisdom to turn them into allies. The galaxy was learning, slowly, imperfectly, but learning. And at the center of that learning stood humans and Talrith together, proving that yesterday's conflict could become tomorrow's cooperation.